every company's most important product is reputation. It's not the thing you produce. It's the reputation you have among your workers and in the community. And so you want a company where people are happy to work for your company, are proud of your company, are proud to be an employee. And so your company should not be focused on making profit for shareholders. If the workers are happy and are more efficient, you're going to make more. Your product is going to be more effective, and you'll end up making more money. So you start out not with the idea we want to make as much money as possible, biggest profit. I want to be in a company where people are happy to come to work. Thank you for coming. I want to thank first Joseph and the LiGHT Company for inviting me here, and Motorola Poland for being my personal sponsor. I want to share some, and also I want to thank in advance my 2 Polish translators. I will try to talk at a moderate speed so not to make it difficult for them. I want to talk a little bit about my career retrospective, some of the highlights of the research I have done over 50 years. And at the end, talk about how these ideas, which are really about basic human nature and social psychology, could have an application in business, and especially in your business. So I'm going to talk first about what I have done, which made me infamous, is my Stanford prison experiment, in which actually I created evil in a psychological laboratory, and that study has become internationally famous or infamous, and there's even a Hollywood movie. I think I may have the trailer for it. So the question of evil is, what makes good people go wrong? And so when I analyze all the research in my book, The Lucifer Effect, not only my work, but I study evil in Auschwitz, I study evil in Rwanda, real evil, and evil in the laboratories of psychologists, criminologists. I identify 3 different kinds of evil. Some evil are in people. There are people, psychopaths, who do horrible things. Their job is to cheat, to lie, to steal, to make money. And we call those dispositional evil, evil in some people. And usually that's all we think about. And that kind of evil, we think of those people as bad apples. But my work and other work that I will present today says, no, often good people put in a bad situation, a social, environmental, political, economic situation, the situation can bring out the worst in people. And we call that situational evil, and that's really a bad barrel. So if you put a good apple in a bad barrel, the bad barrel corrupts the good apple. But what we often ignore is the system the system that creates those situations. And the system is organizational influences, political, economic, cultural, and legal. And these are the bad barrel makers. So when we see some evil in our country, in the world, what I now say is you have to do analysis at those 3 levels, not just any one. So systemic evil is obviously poverty, genocide, slave labor, which is continuing around the world, sex trafficking, which is in virtually every country. And those are called evil of action. It's often good people doing bad things, and it's always to make money. There's also the evil of inaction. Right now, our world is being threatened by climate change, which is unpredictable. People around the world, even when I was at breakfast, people were saying last summer in Sweden was the coldest summer on record. Other places, it's the hottest. In America, San Francisco, we always used to have fog. We have no fog. It's wonderful. But on the east coast of America, Boston, New York, had more snow than they have in 100 years. So the climate change is unpredictable. And the sad thing is many, many countries, and the worst of all, America with Donald Trump, is indifferent to it. They're not doing what they need to do to have corporations put filters on the carbon emission. And so I call that the evil of inaction. So let's start with situational evil. Back in the 1960s, a little Jewish kid, Stanley Milgram, he and I were in the same high school class, and he wanted he wanted to know, could good people do bad things? Because he was Jewish, he was always interested in the Holocaust. He was interested, this is not that long. We were in high school in 1949, 1950, not so long after the Second World War. And he wanted to know, could his family end up in a concentration camp? And everybody said, Stanley, we're Americans. He said, I'll bet the Germans said that also in 1933. So he was the first one to quantify evil. Evil is this vague concept. We talk about in the Lord's Prayer, deliver us from evil, lead us not into temptation. But what he did is he created a situation in which ordinary people who thought they were teachers had to deliver electric shock to their student whenever the student made a mistake. And the question is, you begin with 30 volts, 15 volts, and then you increase by 15, 30, 45. But at the end of this big shock box is 300 volts, 350, and up to 450. And the question is, would anybody go all the way to the end? Because as you get further along, you hear screaming that the person you're supposed to be helping, you're really harming. And so the reason Milgram did this, as I said, is he really, I had a video, but it's not going to play. He wanted to know, as in the Nazi Holocaust, it was good people who were given commands by authorities that went against their moral conscience. So he said, could ordinary people, could an authority get ordinary people, ordinary American citizens, not college students? He tested 1,000 men, ages 20 to 50, and he also tested one group of women. And so before he did his study, he described the study to 40 American psychiatrists. And they said, what percent of all American citizens would go to 450 volts? They said, only 1%. Only psychopaths. So they were thinking about individual evil. In fact, in his study, it was 2 of every 3. 65% of the 1,000 people he tested went all the way to 450 volts. So Milgram, because he tested 1,000 people, he did many different experiments. And this is a graph I made of 16 of his experiments. So what I want to focus on at first is, in study 13, women. No different than men. 2 of every 3 women went all the way. But the most interesting thing that no one talks about is comparing study 5 and study 16. So you come into the experiment, and he said, look, we want to help people improve their memory. That's good. We know that if you reward correct answers, people learn better. But nobody has studied what happens if you punish errors. So that's what we're doing. And so your job is to help your student perform well. But he said, but we're running a little late, so why don't you sit down and watch the previous person. And in study 16, you sit down and you watch somebody like you, another man, go all the way to 450 volts. So he is modeling evil. And then he leaves and it's your turn. Under those circumstances, obedience goes not to 65%, to 91. 9 of 10 people in that condition go all the way. Obviously, what do you do when you reverse it? You come in, you say, watch, and you see people like you say, I refuse. I don't want to go. I quit the experiment. In that case, as you see in 5, obedience drops to 10%. So the most important message in this research is not that most people, the majority, will do evil things. It's that we all are role models. When people see us do something evil, it increases the likelihood that they will do the same. The important point for me, and that's what I'm going to talk about later in my talk about my hero program, is when you see people doing good things, that you become a role model for them. And often you're unaware of it. You're unaware that people are watching you obey the law or break the law. And so this is why we are all role models for other people. And I call this your ripple effect. Do you want your ripple effect to be negative, like in study 16, or positive, like in study 5? So then here's another example of situational evil, the one that I created. So in my work, I was focused on, it's very rare someone tells you, some authority tells you to do something bad. You work in a corporation, you have a job, you're a foreman, you're a manager, you're head of human relations. And in your job, the boss tells you, here's certain things you should do. And so essentially what I wanted to do is create a prison-like environment where we had college students, smart, intelligent college students, who answered an ad I put in the paper about a study of prison life. 75 people applied. We interviewed them and picked 24, most normal, most psychologically healthy, and then we randomly assigned prisoner guard, prisoner guard. Now, nobody wanted to be a prison guard in 1971 because students were all anti-Vietnam War activists. And in those days, students would protest the war, and the university administration always made a big mistake calling the police on the campus, and there would be often violent conflict. And so students hated the police. The police were pigs, and by extension, prison guards. So it didn't matter if they wanted to be guard or prisoner, half were guards and half were prisoners. So it means at the beginning, there's no difference in them. And then, of course, we put them in, the guards in military kind of uniforms, symbols of power, clubs, handcuffs, whistles. And the prisoners, we took away their identity, put them in a smock, and they became a number. And that's where we began. So the prisoners are de-individuated, and the guards have total power over the prisoners. But everybody knows it's an experiment. The experiment is approved by the Stanford Human Subjects Research Committee. Every student signs a form. I will try to do my best to participate in the study for 2 weeks. If I'm a prisoner, there'll be some stress, some minimally adequate diet. But at any time, if I can't handle it, I will say, I quit the experiment, and the experiment to me must release me. I say, okay. What happened is, at the beginning, the guards felt very awkward giving commands because they know, everybody knows they're not prisoners, they're other students. But on the second, so it began with silly push-ups, jumping jacks. But on the morning of the second day, the prisoners revolted. They ripped off their numbers, they barricaded themselves in their cell, they started yelling and cursing at the guards, and suddenly everything changed. There were 3 guards working 8-hour shifts, and 3 prisoners in each of 3 cells, as you see in the middle. And we had 3 guards on backup. So all the 12 guards came in, they tore down the prison cells, and then the prisoners started fighting, and there was physical confrontation. And of course, there were more guards than prisoners, so the guards won. At that moment, the guards said, these are dangerous prisoners, not college students demanding their right. These are dangerous prisons. And from that moment, no one used the word experiment. It was now a prison run by psychologists. So nobody said, I quit the experiment. But they couldn't handle it. They say, I want to see a doctor. I want to see a lawyer. I want to see my mother. I want to get out. So, but I said, no, if you said, I quit the experiment, you get out. But so if they said, I can't handle it, you would go to the parole board as in a real prison. So the question I always ask my students now is, imagine you were a prisoner or a guard. What type of prisoner or what type of manager would you be? If you were a guard or an employee, what kind of employee would you be in your corporation? So again, we don't have time for it now, but typically in my class, I said, think about it, and then we go through. But typically, I would show a video of the experiment, and can you identify with being a guard in this study or a prisoner in this study? So I wrote several books about this after the prison study. The Looser Effect I wrote in 2007, which is in great in-depth of the Stanford prison study, really 10 chapters on each day and about the parole board, and then about the ethics of the study. But earlier, after I did the prison study, I was the first person to study the psychology of shyness. What makes some people introverts and other people extroverts? After that, I began to be interested in the psychology of time perspective. How do people divide the flow of their personal experience into time zones? Past, present, and future is obvious. But I developed the Zimbardo Time Perspective Inventory, a scale that measures in a very precise way individual differences in past or positive, positive or negative past experience, positive or negative present, positive or negative future. And then we show that the paradox is every decision you make, every action you take is determined by your time perspective. The paradox is you're unaware of it because you develop these different time zones in your mind according to your culture, according to your history, according to your family background. So all of the work is becoming aware of your time perspective and taking control of it rather than having it control you. And most recently, I wrote a book called Man Interrupted: Why Young Men Are Failing, academically, socially, and sexually, and living their life in virtual reality, playing video games and watching online pornography, dropping out of school. So it's going to be a whole generation around the world who will never be in your factories or in your business because they're uneducated. They are incapable of doing anything constructive except being a superstar on World of Warcraft. So the Lucifer Effect, I said, helps us understand the nature of evil. And there the idea is how can good people turn evil? And we outline how, like the Milgram study, the Stanford Prison, it's the majority of good people that can easily be seduced across the line to cheat, to lie. And then it turns out, for some people, it's your job. You're a used car salesman. Your job is to sell a defective car to a customer, and they're unaware of it. And your job, you get promoted, the more junk cars you're able to sell. So you know that it's your business. Shyness Research, as I said, I started in 1977. And not only was I the first one to study shyness, but I developed a clinic, a way of treating shyness that's 100% effective because we understand where shyness comes from. Some of it is cognitive. I'm too ugly, I'm too stupid, I'm too fat, I'm too skinny. Some of it is you don't have social skills. You don't know how to make a conversation, to make eye contact. Others, it's just physiologically. You get aroused, you blush. So we have treatment treats each of those three components. And we have a shyness clinic at Palo Alto University now, 40 years later, and we're still being effective. But the reason I started studying, I'm not a shy person. I'm an extrovert. As a child, I had three younger siblings. My mother said my job is to entertain them. So I was always an entertainer for my kid brothers and then in school later. But I conceptualize shyness as a self-imposed psychological prison. The interesting thing about shyness, nobody says, you're a shy person. You can't do that. You say, I'm a shy person, therefore I can't raise my hand to answer the question in class for which I know the answer. I'm a shy person, therefore I can't ask the girl for a date, even though I really want to. I'm a shy person, therefore I can't ask the boss for a raise, even though I know I deserve it. So in a funny way, you become your own prisoner and your own guard. Because in a self-imposed psychological prison, you limit your freedom of association, even your freedom of speech. And shyness now is increasing around the world, partly because young people are living, men and women, but more men, living in a cell phone, living in this virtual reality. And they never learn face-to-face communication. Many young men especially are lonely, have zero friends. We have a lot of surveys. They have many contacts, but no friends. So when you're feeling depressed, there's no one you can call up or turn to, go over their house, they come to your house. Young people don't do that anymore. So they're not learning basic social skills that are essential for communication in life. And then, one of the reasons I said shyness is connecting, is increasing, is many young men, and I come to countries around the world, this is a relatively new problem. When I say young men, it's really teenagers now into their 20s. The digital age is changing young men forever. The sad thing is, more than half of all young men grow up with no father. In America, divorce is 50%. In Czech Republic, it's 60%. I'm not sure what it is in Poland, but in many countries, it's relatively high. And the children wife gets custody of the children. But in addition, fathers die. In addition, fathers are in the service. In addition, fathers are businessmen, often working in other countries, especially many Polish fathers are working in other countries. So there are many, and also in some cases, fathers are in prison. So many, many young men are growing up with no father ever. The other problem is, often when there's a father home, he's there physically but not emotionally. He comes home from hard work, 2 jobs, traveling. He's tired. He doesn't want to communicate, take time to communicate with his children. So the important thing is that girls always have a role model of a mother, and young men are no longer having a masculine role model of a father. And we're going to talk later about how business should help or could help. So time perspective, as I said, is the study of how the flow of human experience gets partitioned into these time zones. They vary between social classes, people. The problem is we overuse some and we underuse others, and the goal is to develop a balanced time perspective. I call it BTP, which I'll describe in a moment. So when I ask you to think about your past, when I think about when you're a child, for some people, they only think about positive things. My happy birthdays, going to a carnival, my good friends, the day I got the best grade in class. Others, it's the opposite. It's regret, it's failure, it's terrible things people said about me. And those become dominant themes. You could be present negative is present fatalistic. That is, you say, my life is fated. This is especially poor people, immigrants. My life is fated by systems outside of my control. There's nothing I can do about it. I just have to live in this negative present. For other people, they're hedonistic. They live for the moment. They live for novelty, for excitement, for seek sensation. And this is exciting and good, but when you do it in excess, you become addicted to things that are exciting, like gambling, sex, and drugs. You could be future-oriented, as many of us are here, namely setting goals, setting means to the goals. But you could also be negative future. You're anxious. Will you succeed? So you have a future goal, but then you spend too much time worrying, anxiety about it. There are other people, and this is many Catholics and some Protestants, who believe that life begins after the death of the mortal body. That is, after you die, if you lead a good life, then you're likely to go to heaven. If you lead a life of sin, you're more likely to go to hell or purgatory. So the idea is lead a good life, not to enjoy the life now, but to prepare yourself for the good life afterwards. So the time paradox is this book, The New Psychology of Time That Will Change Your Life. Now, I should say, you could go on our website, thetimeparadox.com, and there is my scale, and you take the scale online, and it gives you your score immediately. And then it gives you a score compared to what we think is ideal. And so I would like you to do that it's just thetimeparadox.com. So now, before we switch to the last part is, the ideal is a balanced time perspective, meaning high on past positive, low on past negative, moderately low on present fatalism, moderate on hedonism, moderately high on positive future. And so that's a balanced time perspective. And we have 50 studies now in schools and businesses that show it improves well-being, it improves meaning in life, improves a positive work ethic. So this is the thing we now have data from countries around the world why developing this BTP is one of the most effective things you can do in your life. So quickly, we have 16 minutes. Let's inspire everyone to become everyday heroes. So I gave a talk at the TED conference about 10 years ago, The Psychology of Evil. It's really, I must say, a really interesting talk, some of what we said here, but mostly focusing on the Stanford Prison Experiment with videos and things. And also, I was an expert witness for one of the prison guards in Abu Ghraib prison in Iraq, where these guards did horrible things, similar to what my students did in the prison study, only they did it every night for 3 months, and they also, as you know, took pictures of the horrible things they were doing. But at the end of that talk, at the TED conference, I said, we now know how easy it is for good people to turn evil, not only in experiments, but in military, but in everyday life. I wonder if it's possible to inspire and even train ordinary people to become heroes. What do you mean? I mean, because we have an idea. Who are heroes? Heroes are men, male warriors, From Greek literature, who is it? It's Agamemnon, it's Achilles. Some people say Jesus is a hero. Or we have lifelong heroes, Nelson Mandela, Martin Luther King, Mother Teresa. So these are unique people in the world. Some people say Lech Walesa, some people say Irina Senderova. Every country has their heroes. And people say, no, what do you mean you could train ordinary people to be heroes? Heroes are special people. So I said, no, I want to change the conception of hero. Anyone could be a hero. It's ordinary people doing extraordinary actions. It's people transforming compassion into social action that will make them heroes. So for young people, they all have heroes, superheroes. Batman, Robin, Wonder Woman. And I say, oh, these are only heroes. So when I talk to high school students around the world, I say, I also do Skypes. It's another thing I would encourage you to do. So instead of inviting somebody who's expensive, I do a Skype from my home to Budapest, to Tehran, to other places. And I say, you know what? Every superhero envies you. You have something none of them have. What could that be? You have a brain. Superheroes are the brainchild of a cartoonist. And so the important thing now is how you use your brain effectively. And we're going to give you some advice how you could use your brain to become an ordinary, what we call an everyday hero. So heroes act on behalf of others in need, or they defend a moral cause. And to be a hero, heroism is different than altruism because there's always a risk, there's always a danger. But the interesting thing, it's hard to study heroes because they're always modest and humble. Around the world, if you say, that was really heroic, they always say, no, I did what anyone could do. They typically disown the label. So, but for me, it's not bravery in battle. That's the male impulsive hero. It's moral courage. It's willing to stand up, speak out, and take action on behalf of others in need. So I said I want 3D. I want to democratize the notion. Anyone could be a hero. Demystify. You don't need special qualities. You don't have to be more religious. You don't have to come from a special family. And then the notion of hero has always been an individual person. I'm saying, no, heroes are most effective in a hero squad, in a group. So that when you, for example, if you're a whistleblower, you know in your corporation there's some fraud, there's some corruption, there's some deception, there's some people stealing from the company. If you blow the whistle as an individual, you seem like a crusader, a martyr, a big deal. But now when 3 or 4 of you together go to the manager and say, we want to report somebody's bullying someone else, somebody's cheating, there's corruption in our company, we are selling a defective product. Now your challenge becomes a point of view. And in a democracy, that is always respected. So again, we're trying to create a new conception of heroes. So since that time, I've given up evil. No more dining in hell. I'm only going to promote goodness and heroism in the remaining few years of my life. Let's go. Hello? So I created in San Francisco something called the Heroic Imagination Project. The abbreviation is HIP. It's a nonprofit organization that trains ordinary people to take effective action in challenging situations in their lives, in their home, in their school, in their community, and in their businesses. We as educators, we offer interactive lessons that very exciting lessons of different themes in social psychology, which I'll describe in a minute. So a student in Hungary made this cartoon after one of my lectures. And as an aside, I want to say we all should be using cartoons for delivering our messages, not only academics, but in business. This cartoon goes for 1 minute and 40 seconds, and it shares a huge amount of information. It introduces not only me, but the Hero Project. And in addition, it introduces one of our 6 lessons, namely the Bystander Effect. So the Bystander Effect is, in an emergency, when you see a few people do nothing, the social norm is do nothing, mind your own business. But as soon as one person breaks the norm, then other people help. So again, one of our lessons is transforming passive bystanders into active heroes. Hello, I'm Philipa Zimbardo, president and founder of the Heroic Imagination Project. Our main focus is promoting the idea that heroes are ordinary people who take extraordinary action in challenging situations in their lives. Effective heroes do the right thing when other people are doing the wrong thing, or more often when they're doing nothing, and also to expose evil in all of its many forms as a whistleblower. We believe heroism begins in the mind, begins with thinking about yourself as a hero, thinking about yourself as having an inner hero that we will help express through our lessons, our ways of rethinking the nature of good and evil. Transforming bystander apathy into heroic action. Bystander apathy is what characterizes what's known as the bystander effect. In emergency situations, the more people present, paradoxically, the less likely anyone's to help. That's called the bystander effect. It was generated many years ago by the brutal murder in New York City of the woman Kitty Genovese, where many people heard her screams and did nothing. As soon as one person helps, then in seconds, that help is expanded. Our message is, be the one. Be that person who ignores the social norm of doing nothing and creates a new social norm of doing something. So again, I mean, the amount of information conveyed in literally, it's 1 minute and 40 seconds is remarkable. So what we have done is our lessons are combating the bystander effect. Another one I'll talk about is developing a growth mindset. And this is probably the most important thing in every business in the world, to understand the theory and the research behind it. And then the third thing is combating stereotype, prejudice, and discrimination and replacing it with appreciation and understanding of people who are different from you. And then we're developing a new program in this summer called Heroism 101. And I should say that these programs, the first three, are available in Polish. They have been translated by my colleague, Dr. Agnieszka Wilczynska from Krakowie Academy. And we've been using them in many high schools and colleges in many cities in Poland. And now, probably with the help of Joseph and Light, we want to reconfigure our programs, just redesign the language so that they're effective in corporations and businesses. So what can you do? We say the power of one. Be the one person who helps. And remember, your actions matter. And helping is, what do you say? You say, somebody's lying on the step. So what makes our program special, I should say, is they're all based around very provocative videos, some of which I made, some of which are online. And so in the bystander situation, we have a video that I shot in London of a woman lying on the steps of Liverpool Station, attractive woman, well-dressed, not a homeless person, but seeming unconscious. And the clock starts, and the voiceover says, how long before somebody helps? In 4 minutes, 35 people pass by within 1 foot of her. No one helps. And so the teacher, the human relations director says to the students or to the employees, what was going through their head? Why didn't they help this woman? What would you do? 100% watch around the world say, I would help. Well, what's the difference between being in the situation and looking in? When you're in the situation, as soon as 3 people don't help, they create a social norm, and the social norm controls the behavior of everybody in that situation. Do nothing. Mind your own business. And now, so that's the interesting thing. These are strangers. Now, we know social norms influence us, the way you dress, the kind of music you like, the kinds of movies you go to, is really influenced by your friends, by your family. So social norms have a big influence, especially among students. But now the social norm is, mind your own business. And you have to say, suppose it was me. Suppose you were lying there. And in fact, our program is really most well developed, surprisingly, in Hungary, in Budapest. And the head of Telecom Hungary, Christian Matheson, we approached him to say we would like to have your program in your company. And he said, I don't believe in this psychology stuff. And he said, okay, but I'll go to a training. What they do in Hungary is when you go through the bystander training, everybody in the group who's being trained has to become a victim. Lie down in a busy place, and they videotape it. When people help, Then you go over, you say, thank you for helping, it was really very good. You give them a bracelet, I'm an everyday hero. When they don't help, you say, did you see the woman lying there? Or did you see the man lying there? Why didn't you help? And then promise next time you will. So this Christian Matheson agreed. He's a beautiful, handsome man like an actor in a silk suit. He lays down at noon in Student Square, the busiest place in Budapest. And for 5 minutes, not one person stops to help him. And he told the audience while I was there, he said, I could have had a heart attack. And in my own country, nobody stopped to help me. And clearly, I'm not a raggedy person. I'm just the way I am now. So he said, I want every employee in my company to learn these lessons and so that we could create a more positive outlook, not only in our company, but throughout Hungary. So again, it's important to say, I don't care what other people are doing or not doing. I will be the one. And soon as the first person stops, in seconds, a second person joins in. So the power of two is be an ally of anyone who's supporting a pro-social network. The other thing is, why do we care what other people think about us? Well, for many of us, especially students, especially high school, junior high school students, it's so important for other people to like you. And so we have an exercise, dare to be different, for one day. And we say, so one thing you could do is put a magic mark, a square on your forehead. You look in the mirror, once you do it, you don't see it. People say, what is that? It's a square on my forehead. People, they say, take it off. You say, why? I'm the same me. People get crazy because they want you to be what they want. And if you could go through one whole day without erasing it, then you realize you can resist the social norm of being what they want to be. And again, it's the enemy of heroism is egocentrism. If it's about me, it's wrong. It should be about we. Heroes are sociocentric. So it's developing a mindset is that every day, in every way, I'm going to make the world better. And it's really easy. In every situation you go in, what is your main job? You learn the name of the person, you look them in the eye, ideally you give them a compliment. And this is anybody. This is the person who serves you in the cafeteria. You ask what their name is. Many of them are wearing a name tag, nobody even notices. So your job in the world is to make other people feel special. And you do it in these very small ways that make a really big difference. So hip in business, over the past 4 years, again, the in Budapest they call it Hero Square. As you know, Hungarians have had a big problem with heroes protesting against communism, having their protests crushed by the Soviets. So now our program is in Telecom, Mercedes-Benz, and Sanofi. And so the training has proved useful, fostering cooperation and responsibility within the company, but also with coworkers. And essentially, we try to change stereotypes. We try to create the attitude that inclusion is important and break down the typical hierarchies, the authoritarian hierarchies. And most companies are going to be more effective if a company really has a more family model. Somebody has to be leading at the top, but now it's the modern family. It's not it's father and mother working together, sharing skills and resources. And all the work we've done in Hungary, and we have a number of social psychologists working with us, shows that worker efficiency increases, performance increases. Workers don't call in sick as much. Workers are proud to work for this company. And you say, every company's most important product is reputation. It's not the thing you produce. It's a reputation you have among your workers in the community. And so you want a company where people are happy to work for your company, are proud of your company, are proud to be an employee. And so your company should not be focused on making profit for shareholders. If the workers are happy and are more efficient, you're going to make more. Your product is going to be more effective, and you'll end up making more money. So you start out not with the idea we want to make as much money as possible, biggest profit. I want to be in a company where people are happy to come to work, and it's going to reduce, as I said, sick leave and turnover. So we also have a company I work with called Bright City in San Francisco. And these are people in business. And what we do is they've taken all of our lessons and they put it in an interactive format so that they teach people how to communicate effectively in a dyad, compassionate communication. But what you're going to talk about is the bystander effect. You're going to talk about mindset. And so the growth mindset means that everything is improvable with practice and effort. Fixed mindsets, you say, I'm good at A, I'm bad at B. Women are good at C, Asians are bad at D. So we all have, so a fixed mindset is like a prejudice, but it's a prejudice not only about others, but about yourself. And the important thing, and this is work by Carol Dweck, D-W-E-C-K, at Stanford University. She has a wonderful book called Mindsets. And it says, every ability is improvable with practice and effort. And so when you see somebody who's really outstanding, it's not that they started that way. It's not they're more talented. They simply put in more hours of work. So in our lessons, now what's special about these lessons for business is these can be online. So you can have two people in different places. They don't have to be next to each other communicating. And what they're communicating about is the bystander effect, mindset, etc. And we do pre-post measures. There's increases in courage, decreases in social dominance orientation, that is, people who believe in the importance of hierarchy, the importance of dominance, the importance of like a right-wing mentality. Reduce prejudice, reduce depression. So these are just lessons, taking my ideas, but putting them in a new format, teaching people how to communicate. And again, it's really important we have young employees who live a lot of time in virtual reality, who never take time to learn how to communicate with other employees, or especially men or women communicating across genders. So our program, and my time is almost up, is now worldwide. We started very modestly in San Francisco. Curiously, we're only on the west coast of America. But now we're in Budapest, 1,000 high schools everywhere. We're about to begin in London, England, about to begin in Portugal, in Krakow and Warsaw here, as I said, with Dr. Wilczenska. I'm a Sicilian, and I go to Sicily every year. We have a program in the ghetto in Palermo with the poorest children in the world. And now the Sicilian government invites immigrants from Western Africa. Young men and women ages 17 to 20. They put them in a gymnasium, give them clothes, teach them Italian. And now we teach them to be trainers. We teach them our lessons. And these African kids, many of whom are Muslim, go to Italian high schools where kids are all Catholic, white, Catholic and white. And now they are teachers. And they have status. Not that they're simply accepted as immigrants. They have status because they're teachers. And we give them, let's say, 100 euros for every class they do. Half the money they send home to their parents. And so now they are not only accepted, they not only have status, but now they are helping support their families. And I said, we're in Bali, Indonesia, we're in Tehran, Geelong, Australia, Prague, Buenos Aires, Bratislava, and we're going around the world. Actually, in all of these places, we license the lesson for a very modest fee, but then I or one of my teammates goes there and does a training for, let's say, up to 20 people, of trainers, of teachers, and I love to do it. It's really, really, for me, exciting. So check our website, heroicimagination.org. We hope you'll get involved, support our projects, and I will be available for questions. I think that's it. Okay, thank you. Okay.